What's the worst thing you did as a horny teen? I was in theater, and during plays, we would have to run to a tiny area and change clothes. They had a small separator in the middle for boys and girls, but it wasn't uncommon for someone in a hurry to step out mid-change in a rush to not miss their entrance. During one show, I was in freshman year, I was going in to change and saw hot senior girl walking out with her skirt a little too high, and I caught a glance of her vag for a brief second. I then proceeded to rush to the bathroom and rub one out, and after I finished, I changed and missed my entrance by 3 to 5 minutes. So I walked on stage and improv'd my way back into the scene, told everyone I had gotten sick and threw up, and then rushed back on stage. Everyone applauded me and praised my dedication to the theater. 10 out of 10. Would jerk again.
People who quit their jobs on the first day. What was your "I'm outta here" moment? I got a job at a Build-A-Bear knockoff at the end of a mall that wasn't very busy. My interview with the owners was interesting. They were an older couple who said that they had wanted to open a Chick-fil-A, but you need about $1 million to do that. My first day, one other girl was working, and she didn't really talk to me. I had basically no training, and she disappeared into the back. I was standing at the register area, which was underneath a giant storybook mushroom. A mother and her young son walked in and started to look at the bearskin options. I greeted them and left them to look around. They ended up leaving after a couple of minutes, and my coworker reappeared from the back with the cordless phone and handed it to me. It was my boss. He told me that when a customer walks in, he wants me to come out from under the mushroom to them. Come out from the mushroom. After he finished speaking to me, I hung up and went to my coworker and asked about the phone call. She said the place has cameras set up, and the owners watch them from their house and call in a lot. I did not come back to work.
My ex cheated on me because she thought I was going to break up with her. So for a little backstory, I 33M had been dating Sarah 32F for 6 years and loved every second of it. We were literally soulmates, and so obviously I was going to ask her to marry me. I decided that I would take her to a really expensive restaurant, and when we got back I would have a beautiful display with loads of flowers and a sign asking her to marry me. So when the day came, I was all dressed up in a 400-pound suit, and when I told Sarah we needed to go, she came downstairs in a t-shirt, jumper and jeans. This upset me quite a bit. Once we were in the car and halfway to the restaurant, Sarah told me she felt ill, asked if I would pull over at the pharmacy and get her some paracetamol. Thinking nothing of it, I obliged. However, when I came out of the store, my car was missing and there was an envelope addressed to me where the car was parked. Inside the envelope were pictures of her naked with another man and a note that said she knew I was going to break up with her, so she decided to cheat on me and leave me before I could do it to her. Obviously, when she arrived home and saw the display I had set up in our room, she realized she had made a massive mistake. About 10 minutes after being abandoned, I got a call from her. She started the call by claiming it was a big joke, but when I mentioned the pictures, she became really apologetic and then followed up by telling me she can't wait to get married. I hung up and called my friend and asked if I could stay the night, which is where I'm writing this from. I've got no clue what I should do. Should I take her back? Should I take her back?
What's the dumbest thing you've done out of pure horniness? On weekends during high school, I frequently would sneak out of the house and sneak into my girlfriend at the time's parents' house. Well, I didn't have a car or a driver's license at the time, and the only car I could use was my mom's standard Toyota Camry. This led to many situations of me being stalled out on a hill at 3 a.m. with no driver's license, but I did learn how to drive standard quite well. My mom was really confused by that. Also, sometimes I would tell my parents I was staying the night with a friend and have my parents drop me off at school for my friends to pick me up. Well, my GF at the time lived about a mile from school, so I would just walk to her place. But when I would spend the night, I would have to hide in the closet, leave by 5 a.m. because her dad always came and checked on her before he left for work. So, that led to a couple instances of sleeping in the closet, but the best/worst was when I had to leave, but no place to stay. So before this situation, my buddy was able to obtain a copy of the key to the guy's locker room, and I happened to have it that night. So after being kicked out of her place and, of course, getting my rocks off, I walked back to school and managed to sneak into the locker room. The locker room.
What's the corniest thing you've ever done that you now realize was just plain stupid? Me and this girl was always the last two off the school bus. When everyone else got off, we would hold hands, and that progressed into feeling each other up. Well, one day she told me her parents would be leaving for the afternoon after she got off the bus and invited me over. I was 15 at the time, so I rode my Honda 3-wheeler 8 miles in the cold so I could finally seal the deal with my school bus crush. Might not sound like a big deal, but 8 miles on a 3-wheeler in the freezing cold was a pretty dumb move. The ride there was full of excitement, the ride home was full of regret. Oh no, why the regret? It took me so long to get there. By the time things got heated, her parents was pulling up the driveway. Thank God she had a long driveway. I hopped back on my 3-wheeled love machine I had parked in the woods and started the long journey home. Our bus lust continued until she got a boyfriend and I never got a second chance.
What will never not be funny? Accidentally walking in on my dad, my uncle, and my grandma smoking of my grandma's medical marijuana as a teen. My grandma saying, "Are you in or are you out?" Mostly asking if I was going to keep this secret from my aunt. not knowing any of them smoked and saying yes, because how often does that opportunity occur all at once? I take a couple hits, and we go to dinner, hot dogs and macaroni. We all keep our cool, probably too silently eating our food, and I look over as I'm trying to suction off that inevitable first bite of bread bun from the roof of my mouth, and I lock eyes with my tiny little grandma doing the same thing, and the seal of silence broke, and we laughed so hard despite trying to hold back. My uncle and dad covered their plates as we burst out laughing, mouths full. My aunt in utter confusion and sudden realization all at once, just shaking her head while we tried to control ourselves to no end. Best memory ever. Still makes me laugh. It's the small things in life. There's nothing bigger. If there's nothing. What's the best mistake you've ever made? I made a mistake and asked the wrong woman out on a date. I have trouble remembering names and faces. There was a girl named Vicky that I talked to during lunch breaks at school. There was another girl named Marie that I met once at a cookout. I had an event coming up with dinner and dancing, and I wanted to ask Vicky to be my date since I knew her better. One day, while rushing between classes, a girl named Vicky stopped me and said hello. I surprised her by asking her to come with me to the event. She agreed, and I took out my notepad to write down her number. I wrote down the name Vicky, but she told me that wasn't her name. I apologized for my mistake and asked her what her name was. It was Marie. I realized that I had asked out the wrong girl, but I didn't want to back out since she had already said yes. We went on the date, and that night, we both fell in love. 3 weeks later, we got engaged. It has been 38 years since then, and we have a son together. We are still happily together, and yes, she knows the whole story.
Good morning, sir. How can I assist you? Sir?
Did I get in the wrong line?
No, this is the right one, sir.
You asked me if I need assistance. That implies that I need a service. I'm not here for a service. I'm here to purchase a product. I am here to purchase coffee.
Oh, well, I do brew the coffee for you, which is a service.
No, not necessarily, because if you had a self-serving option, then I would just go ahead and do that. But I'd still be purchasing the product, which is what I'm trying to do.
Okay, would you like to buy a coffee?
Okay, now we're making more sense. All right, I'll have the Robusta variety.
Okay, great.
Do you know where that's from?
This one's from Gambia, sir.
Okay, all right. You're redeeming yourself a bit.
So happy to hear that.
And I'll have that at pH 6.
Oh, like pH level? So you want milk, or?
Yes, that's what that means.
Women of Reddit, what is the creepiest way that a stranger has tried to come on to you? Guy who showed me what our future kids would look like via some face app. Guy who I served in a bar I worked at when I was 18. He told me he was going to walk behind that bar and finger you until you effing finish. He was in his 50s. He did not finger me, as I threw him out and barred him. Old lady here. Asked an even older man about the right kind of bit for a particular piece of material I wanted to cut, since we were both in the power tool aisle. He told me which one to buy and then immediately asked if he could kiss me. After telling him no and quickly walking away, I see him just a few minutes later pushing a cart with a female companion I believe was his wife or girlfriend. Wife or girlfriend. Wife or girlfriend.
Would I be the hole if I break up with my GF over her weight? I, 28 meters, am 6'5", 200 pounds and go to the gym 3 times a week and go for jogs daily. I met my GF, 24, at the gym about 2 years ago. She's smaller and was thin at the time, she was cute and funny, and we hit it off really well. Almost a year ago we decided to move in together, and I noticed then she had gained a couple pounds, but didn't think anything of it. Ever since then she has consistently put on more and more weight. Easily 60 plus pounds now. Of course she no longer works out either. I find her eating habits and appearance gross now. The thin girl I was so attracted to has been replaced by an insatiable eater. She eats bags of candy and wants fast food for every meal. The apartment we are renting lease is ending in April. She has been hinting at wanting to get married, but I'm thinking of cutting her and the apartment free at lease end. So my question is, would I be the hole if I dump my girlfriend because she has gained so much weight I'm no longer attracted to her? Longer attracted to her. Longer attracted to her. Longer attracted.
My neighbor bangs on the floor. I have an upstairs neighbor who always bangs on the floor when she thinks I'm being too loud. She also leaves notes on my fence, shaming me to the street. However, despite her strict rules of conduct, she herself stomps around her apartment and plays loud music at 6:30 a.m. while she showers. It's quite entertaining, I must say. I live, laugh, and love here under her reign every day. The other day we had our first day of spring. It was a beautiful and warm day with a gentle breeze that entered the house. I noticed that my naughty neighbor had her balcony doors open too. So I immediately decided to do a little DIY project project. I grabbed some spray paint, closed my doors with my dog inside, and started repainting the legs of my outdoor chairs. Every time my neighbor closed her doors, I took a break, and as soon as she reopened them, I went back outside to apply another coat of paint, letting the fumes drift into her house with the lovely spring breeze. I could hear her slamming the door a little harder each time, and it was like sweet music to my ears. I made sure the entire painting process took the whole day, so she couldn't fully enjoy the sunshine. It was such a satisfying success that I might consider taking up furniture revamping as a new hobby.
AITA for ruining both my parents' marriages for disowning me? I am the byproduct of my parents' extramarital affair. Both of them had spouses at the time. My birth mother got pregnant and had to tell her husband as he was overseas when I was conceived, so there was no way I was his. A few months after I was born, they decided not to divorce. I was given to my grandparents on my mother's side to raise, with my birth father secretly paying child support without his wife's knowledge. Both my parents had other children. My dad's side knows nothing about me, but my siblings on my mom's side were told that I am adopted by my grandparents. Recently I decided that I wanted to know more about my dad's family, and I sent a friend's request to one of my siblings and my dad so I could get to know him. Well, he freaked out and contacted my birth mom, and they asked to speak to me over Skype. They both told me that they couldn't risk staying in contact with me and told me that they were going no contact and to please respect it and move on with my life. Well, I did pretty much the opposite. I contacted my dad's wife and shared screenshots of our conversations and told her everything. She is now divorcing him, while on my mother's side I told both my siblings, who then went on to tell extended family including her husband's side, so now they are separate and my siblings hate my mother. Currently my siblings on both sides' lives have been upturned, and after the satisfaction has worn off I feel like I unnecessarily hurt them through my parents. AITA for ruining my parents' marriages?
What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? I once helped out my female friend's family by taking care of their cat for a week. Every day for a week, I would go over there and snoop around their house. I found my friend's diary, and proceeded to read the entire thing. I used this information to get her to like me, and she is currently my wife. I cut off all contact with everyone I know and moved to Kenya. I tell people a fake name and a fake background and have made it appear to my family that I died on boat trip in the Pacific. No, I am not joking. I am dead in the United States. I accidentally killed 7 people. I put a rag into a new water heater exhaust to keep debris out and installed it in a rental. I get a call a week later, there's been an accident. I show up and there's a ton of EMS and police. They ask me where the gas shutoff is, and I go down to shut the gas off and see the end of the rag I forgot sticking out of the top of the heater. Rip the rag out, shut the gas off and head upstairs only to be told all the tenants were dead. I drink all day now and sleep. It's killing me from the inside every single day, but if I say anything my family is ruined. We have a bunch of rental properties and we'd be shut down.
What is your accidentally caught your spouse cheating horror story? One of my former coworkers loaded in an SD card with a scanned project file on it. He put it into the conference room PC. We were treated to explicit pictures of his wife doing it with another guy. We were just stunned. This was in a senior budgetary meeting with the outside accountants and auditors, and he was sitting right there and we were looking at his wife and another guy going at it. I reached over and shut the projector off. Nobody said anything. He got up and walked out and drove off in his car, left his phone and laptop sitting on the table. He wound up driving to his parents' house 3 states away. He was gone for a week.
What did a teacher say that made you immediately walk out of the classroom? Gym class, swimming. We were told from day one that if we did not dress out and swim on swim day we would fail the class. No excuses even for periods. And we had to swim with the boys. I love swimming, so I had no desire to avoid it. But on swim day, on the way to the pool, the boys all started grabbing us all by the butts and breasts, and the coach seemed to egg it on by pushing us into a tiny lobby by the pool. Us girls were all screaming and fighting, but the coach laughed and called us prissies. I immediately ran back to the locker room to get dressed. After that, every swim day I refused to dress out. My mother supported my decision. I was threatened every day with failure. I did not care. But then my friend, who was a shy, quiet, good girl, said she could not swim because her periods were so heavy she was very sick. The coach forced her to run bleachers until they passed out. I saw it because I also had to run bleachers for refusing to dress out. After that, I started all-out war against the coach and convinced most of the girls to refuse dressing out. I refused to finish the physical fitness test. Every test.
Introverts, how did you meet your girlfriend? She came over to me in a coffee shop while she was on vacation in my country, to ask how to tip. We had a 2-hour conversation, and then an amazing 5-hour lunch 2 days later. She complained about her hostel and I offered her my spare bedroom. She accepted. Nothing happened, although it seems crystal clear in retrospect that we were falling for each other. Duh, I didn't want to be douchey and make her feel uncomfortable under my roof, so putting the moves on her was not something I seriously considered. 2 nights later, I had to be gone for most of the night, on a work assignment, and I asked if she would please watch and walk my dog in my absence. I came home at 5 a.m., and was greeted by my suddenly very soft, very fluffy dog. She had somehow understood "will you please wash my dog," and apparently didn't find that a strange request at all. The next evening, after we'd been talking over a bottle of wine for hours, it seemed she'd had enough of my apparent indecisiveness, took the wine glass out of my hand, put it down, and leaned in for a kiss. That was 26 years ago.
We've been married 23 years. Women of Reddit, what was something you didn't know about men till you got with one? Morningwood. Had absolutely no idea that thing just pops up every night till I started dating my first boyfriend. That whole thing about the weight of their heart being their stomach? Accurate. I once hooked up with a guy I met on Tinder, made him breakfast the next morning. He said no woman had ever cooked for him before, looked teary, and now we're married. How rarely they get complimented. I told my guy that I loved his shirt and he didn't even know what to say. He told me he couldn't remember the last time someone complimented him, so I've started looking for little, random things to compliment him on.
Am I the asshole for snooping into husband's phone and finding provocative pictures of my best friend under hidden photos? I'm pregnant. I had a weird suspicion and I acted on it. Went through my husband's phone and found provocative pictures of my best friend on there that were recently added. They are not sleeping with each other. He pulled them off Instagram.
What is it like to have Mark Cuban as an investor in your startup from Shark Tank? I taped for the show Shark Tank and ultimately got a deal with Cuban. My episode never ended airing, which I believe was because we never closed the deal with Cuban. After we taped, his people got in contact with us and sent us line items of requirements and other information. The contract: he would own 20% of the company and pay $150,000. No salary for the founders, only yearly disbursements. If anyone decides to sell shares, Cuban gets first rights to purchase them. If we decide to go for more funding, Cuban gets right to purchase 20% of raising. The $150,000 will be given to us as we need. If we are on brink of bankruptcy or file, he gets first rights to buy our assets such as patents we must update weekly on expenses and reports for them. If we want to expand, we must contact them for approval. Basically, his 20% share was giving him full control of the company. We didn't start the company and build it to $850,000 revenue in 3 years to work for someone. He isn't working and putting his sweat, blood, and tears to bust his ass. He is putting in $150,000 that is being dispersed in small allotments. 70% of deals on Shark Tank fall through after the episode is taped. Don't believe the BS you see.
What's your personal butterfly effect story? My aunt was always on time to everywhere. It's trauma left over from her childhood. She lived in the Bronx and worked in Lower Manhattan, so she usually had to get up pretty early to get to work on time. One night, the power in her building went out. No idea why. It was the only building in the area affected. Her digital alarm had reset when the power came back on, so her alarm did not wake her up. She woke up with 30 minutes before she should be at work. Panicking, she got ready and ran to the subway. The subway by her apartment was having maintenance issues and she got stuck for 20 minutes 3 stops away. For the first time in her life, she called into work sick, saying she'd be in too late and would work overtime the next day. She walked back to her apartment and fell asleep. She woke up about 4 hours later when one of my other aunts was pounding on her door. My other aunt was hysterical because she hadn't been answering her phone. And that's how a weird electrical mishap caused my aunt's alarm clock to reset, making her late, missing her train, meaning she avoided being in the building next to the World Trade Center on 9/11.
Am I the a-hole for having a snack? For background, I'm recovering from an eating disorder. Part of my recovery means that if I'm hungry, I need to eat. I need to get used to responding to hunger by eating. If I don't eat when I'm hungry, it can become a habit, and I could relapse. I know that's hard for a lot of people to understand, but it's the best way I can explain it. I always carry snacks to accommodate this. My boyfriend asked me to go to a family event with him at his aunt's house. Dinner was at 6:30, but the gathering started at 4 and we were on time. Around 5:30 I started to feel hungry, so I ate a small granola bar from my purse to reinforce the eat when you're hungry rule. Dinner was at 6:30 and excellent. When we left, my boyfriend was upset. He said I offended his family by eating a snack before dinner was served and implied they were bad hosts. He said I should have waited. I reminded him that I have to eat when I'm hungry. He said dinner was in an hour and should have been sufficient to enforce the rule, but it doesn't work that way. I have to eat as soon as I realize I'm hungry, or it's a slippery slope that could lead to me going days without food. Boyfriend was angry and accused me of just wanting attention and being inconsiderate. Should I consider it?
Am I the asshole for telling my soon-to-be mother-in-law that my engagement ring is cursed? I, female 26, just got engaged. My soon-to-be mother-in-law is a nightmare. We are currently renovating a part of our place, and she has been lent a key in the meantime because she keeps coming over uninvited under the guise of helping clean up, but she really just likes to snoop and interfere. I do martial arts and take my engagement ring off before class. I came home from an afternoon class one day, and my engagement ring was not in the jewelry dish that I leave it in. I asked her about it, and she told me that she'd taken it to a jeweler to get it cleaned. She looked super smug about it, and when I asked which jeweler, she pretended she couldn't remember. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of having a reaction to it, so I just let it slide for a couple of days. A couple of days pass, and I ask her about it again, and she's super vague. still pretending she can't remember which jeweler and saying she's too busy to go pick it up anytime soon.
What's the best mistake you've ever made? I made a mistake and asked the wrong woman out on a date. I have trouble remembering names and faces. There was a girl named Vicky that I talked to during lunch breaks at school. There was another girl named Marie that I met once at a cookout. I had an event coming up with dinner and dancing, and I wanted to ask Vicky to be my date since I knew her better. One day, while rushing between classes, a girl named Vicky stopped me and said hello. I surprised her by asking her to come with me to the event. She agreed, and I took out my notepad to write down her number. I wrote down the name Vicky, but she told me that wasn't her name. I apologized for my mistake and asked her what her name was. It was Marie. I realized that I had asked out the wrong girl, but I didn't want to back out since she had already said yes. We went on the date, and that night, we both fell in love. 3 weeks later, we got engaged. It has been 38 years since then, and we have a son together. We are still happily together, and yes, she knows the whole story.
What's the cringiest thing you've seen a bride do at her wedding? Ask money to fund their expensive honeymoon. A close friend of mine wanted a grand honeymoon after their wedding. She got these ideas on social media, where people spend a week in the Bahamas. She is an aspiring Instagram influencer and would do anything to look expensive. She even shared how excited she is for their Bahamas trip and even shared to her followers, where they will stay at a 5-star hotel. The time she is getting close to her wedding, she sends us a registry link to the products she wants. Wedding registry is basically a wish list for wedding couples, and they send it out to their guests who wish to give them a gift. Anyway, her registry was absurdly expensive. She listed a lot like a $3,000 coffee machine. None of them drink coffee, and $3,000 Hermes blankets. I thought she was out of her mind until the wedding, where at the reception, she told everybody that they will pass a little bucket for us to put cash to fund their Bahamas trip and that it is mandatory. She wants it fully paid off, and it was a total of $12,000 trip. I was shocked because looking at the guests, none of them were willing to fund the trip. I found out they only got $300.
What's the most horrific act committed by someone you know personally? Guy I went to school with was real calm, very smart, and everyone loved him. He was a gentle person from what I remember. He had lost his mom a couple years before this. She was a nurse and they found her dead in a hospital room during her shift. Unknown causes. Our senior year of high school, dude is a championship wrestler, dominating his grades, and just doing good. He lived with his dad who was a police officer for years and years. At lunch one day he left school and came back. Everything was normal and the day was finished out. His dad did not show up for work that evening, and the police department sent someone to go knock on his door. They found the house ransacked and his dad lying in bed, deceased. Later that night they called my grandmother in for questioning because she cleaned their house once a week. Not much later than that, the guy I went to school with broke down and confessed that he had come home on lunch to ask for money, and he and his dad got in an argument. His dad laid down like normal for his shift, and he took his dad's service pistol, gunned him down, and after realizing what he'd done, he'd freaked out and turned the house upside down to make it look like a robbery, then went and finished the day at school to try to make it seem like he had no clue what had happened. What is the scariest thing you've witnessed in the middle of the night? Was riding along with my dad who was a trucker. It was Christmas break, and sometime while driving through the night, he shouts, "Oh no," over and over again. I was laying in the truck cabin bed playing my PlayStation on a little TV, so I was a bit concerned. We hadn't hit anything. He tells me to put my shoes on and we gotta help, and tells me to dial 911. So dad pulls over, and I see it behind our tractor trailer. A speeding car was going too fast and had rolled multiple times down a steep embankment. So we went to see if we could do anything while we waited for ER. Family of 4, 2 kids in the back, no seatbelts, no kids seats. Everyone inside was a crumpled bloody mess. Once ambulances came, we left. They arrived pretty quick, and though I can't say for certain, I was pretty sure the whole family had passed. Kinda messed me up a bit. Had never seen a body in that state, or a dead body outside of a funeral. Even to this day, 20 plus years later, I still think about what I had seen, even after going into the medical field and witnessing worse. What's the weirdest thing you've done while horny? When I was maybe 13 to 14 I was extremely sexually curious and started putting random objects into my V. One time I shoved a lipstick tube up there, but when I pulled it out the lid had stayed stuck inside me. I was crying trying to fish it out for a good 30 minutes because I would have rather died from an infection than go to my very conservative Korean parents and admit to my personal sin time. In college I lived off campus. I went to a really small town and lived with 2 guys. During the summer we would just work and play video games, but someone was always home and the rest of campus was dead as F. One time I said I was taking my dog to the forest preserve but really was going for a mega self-pleasure session in my car. It was hard to do it in the shower because it was right next to my other roommate's bedroom. When I came home my roommate was like, "Did you go alone? You left the dog here." Whoops lol. I got turned on carving pumpkins with the X1 fall and decided the pumpkin guts were slimy and probably would make an excellent feeling on a Richard. So I J off my ex with hands full of pumpkin guts. He loved it. He's probably never looked at pumpkin carving the same since.
Disturbing. 2-sentence horror stories. I never meant to make my ex cry. I only meant to make him bleed. I like living alone, because when I hear a faint singing or feel a hand on my thigh, I know it's one of them. I couldn't wait any longer to be a mother. So I grabbed a knife to rip the baby from my stomach.
I can't sleep in the same room as my boyfriend when I'm at your house? Fine, we won't sleep there. I was a recent college graduate who had made the immoral choice to move in with a boyfriend without getting married. We moved in together in another state about a 6-hour drive from my parents, who lived about 2 hours away from the boyfriend's parents. When we came back to visit, my parents made us sleep in separate rooms, beds because we weren't married. After a visit or two like this, Christmas holiday rolled around. We were planning to be in the state for the whole week between Christmas and New Year's, splitting the time between the two families. We start by spending 2 nights at my parents', then around dinner time, the 3rd day, we leave to head to his parents'. My parents are surprised and confused that we are not staying longer. They expected us to split the time evenly. My reply, well, at his parents' house, we get to sleep together, so we want to spend the night there. Bye. Before the next visit, they let us know they have decided that since we are a committed couple, they will allow us to share a room, even though we're not married. As a student, what is the saddest thing you have found out about your teacher? The entire class stood outside the door waiting for him to unlock it like he did every class. We stood there waiting and waiting. Even the late kids were now there at this point. The teacher had never been this late. After around 15 minutes, the principal lets us in the classroom. We all sat down in our chairs wondering what was going on. Then it came. The principal stood up and said something that shocked us all. Your teacher, Mr. M, has passed away. The room went silent. We were all shocked. It was as if lightning has just struck every person in that room at once. The man couldn't have been more than 43 years old, and he didn't look sick when we had seen him 2 days prior. God, the silence. The principal then explained that Mr. M had been sick for a while with pancreatitis. He never expected to live to an old age and had prepped the staff in case this event ever occurred. Some kids started crying, others asked questions, and some just sat there in silence. We were eventually all sent home early. Mr. M was my 11th grade film teacher. This man was one of the main reasons I am pursuing a career in film editing today. He was the one who started the spark,